I have.
Yeah.
And I have sharing capability already?
You should have. You should
Okay.
have. So, hello, Betsy.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
All right. Lou, Regina,
Betsy.
we'll turn the show over to you.
Sounds wonderful.
Okay, welcome everybody.
Thank you.
Was just get to my slideshow underneath all of this. Here we go. Okay. I'm Lou Blanchard. I work at Empowered Pathways. I started there as an AmeriCorps volunteer 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago now, in the Community Mediation Service Corps. And that's something that is overseen by NYSDRA, the New York State Dispute Resolution Association. And they have AmeriCorps members that serve at different CDRCs throughout the state. And I was lucky enough to end at Empowered Pathways because this is my home in Utica. Was just thrilled with what I was learning and really very, very saddened that I had not learned about mediation and conflict resolution 30 some years ago when it became, when it was first introduced, because I would have loved to make it my career. Although I did love the career I had, I have really, really enjoyed being part of. So I'll let Regina introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Regina Brown. I am the Alternative Dispute Resolution Supervisor as well as the Youth Services Specialist. And I think I might have met some of you before. We're very happy to be here today.
Yes. So now my current role is Restorative Justice Coordinator, which means I do a lot of different things, basically. So we wanted to give you a quick overview of our agency, because I know some of you may not have been at the presentation Regina and Stephanie gave. And then we'll talk about restorative justice particularly. Okay. And I'm going to have to see how I can, there we go. All right. Wasn't working at first. Whoops. No, went too far back. Great. Everything doesn't work the way you want it to at times. Previous, here we go. And previous. Nope. And previous, did we go too far? There we are. All right, here we go. That's what I wanted. So who we are, we're called Empowered Pathways now, but we used to be the Peacemaker program, and many of you may be familiar with that name, and also the Women's Employment and Resource Center, which is shortened to WORK. And what we do is, on the Peacemaker program side, we do alternative dispute resolution, or ADR, which is mediation, conflict coaching, and restorative justice for individuals, youth, families, and community groups. And it is it's an alternative. The alternative comes in because it's an alternative to the legal process that many of us are used to, and that was the traditional way of solving disputes. Although some people who had faith communities would take it to their faith community. I definitely understand that aspect also. We also, on the work side, we do job training on the computer and internet and soft skills. They do assistance with resume writing, with job applications and cover letters, assistance with interviewing skills and job placement. And they're very much trying, helping people obtain employment who are either underemployed or are unemployed at the time. And they work with displaced homemakers, in particular, single mothers, divorced women, widows, females primarily, although males do have a place in it too if they qualify, who are looking for work, okay? And then on the dispute resolution side, it's anyone with a dispute or conflict within themselves or with another party or parties. So it's a really broad area of services that we provide. And I put the Broadway Theater League connection in there because I didn't want to forget it at the end. So our work program is very fortunate. They were picked as the charity for the Donner Summer production that's coming up later this month. And if you remember one of her songs, it was "She Works Hard for Her Money." So it seemed a match made in heaven because it's the work program and these ladies work hard for their money too. So, if you have a chance to go to that program, they're asking that you bring a donation that would help the participants in the program out. So I just wanted to mention that so I wouldn't forget it at the end. So now let's get on to restorative justice. There are basically 3 tiers of restorative justice. One of them is building relationships. And that's kind of the first, less formal tier. And the second tier is repairing harm. All right, and in that tier, there's a whole bunch of areas where that could come in. It could come in school services. It could come in, for instance, children who've been suspended or have been incarcerated if they're an older teen, and now they're re-entering, right? And then tier 3, rebuild. And this is where there's been extreme harm, and it's where the relationships have really been fractured, and you need to rebuild those relationships. So they go from less formal, where we're building in the beginning, and the tenets of restorative practice are speaking from the heart, listening from the heart, asking open-ended questions, and we do a lot of this in circles, all right? In circles, it's where you share your story and you listen to others' stories. And it's not discourse, it's not dialogue. And as some of us know, I'm sure many of us have experienced where you're sharing your story and somebody says, yes, but, or they might say, well, you shouldn't feel that way. Well, in circle, that doesn't happen because we are not there to discourse or to rebut anybody. We're there to just listen with our heart and listen with an open mind. And in doing so, we realize that others' realities can be very different from ours, and that the impact of those realities can have a real difference in our perception of reality. So it can be a very, very powerful way of approaching either building relationships in a community, in a neighborhood, in a school, anywhere where you want to build some type, in a church, anywhere where you want to build a community. The middle part is maintaining that community, trying to make sure that, if something has been broken or there's been some discourse or some disputes, that trying to, bring that community back together, helping people to participate, cooperate, be part of the solution. And that's a big part of it is okay, coming together, sharing your experiences, but also where do we want to go from here? Where do we want to take this? What solutions do we think we can work on? What solutions do we see as being possible? All of these actually discuss norms and values, but that just happened to be under this one because it comes in a little more maybe. And then the more formal is repairing harm. And as I said, if you have some real harm that's been done, families have been torn apart, maybe somebody's been in jail, a father, a family member, and you need to reintroduce them to the community and to the family. This is something that can help that person to be embraced, to take responsibility for their behaviors, but also to help the family to express their needs and how it affected them. And, if we don't get that chance, to just kind of explore what happened and how things affect us and what impact it had on us, it's kind of hard to move forward. Sometimes you really have to get in there and feel it before you can move forward with it. Core values of restorative justice are really not that much different from any other ADR. We want to be safe. We want to make sure everyone in there is safe. It is voluntary. Nobody can be forced to be part of restorative justice. They have to choose to be. It's self-determined. They are going to decide what's the best steps for them after exploring the options and doing some real good decision making on looking at all the options and looking at the past and looking at what they need to, what they see is, we just did some I'm going to bring this in. We just did some training on family group conferencing, and it talked about the three houses that we all live in. Okay, the house of worries, and the house of hopes and dreams, and then the house we're in presently, kind of the good things that are happening. Okay, the house of good things. And in determining what you want to do, that all comes in to looking at the past, looking at the present, and looking at where you want to be. So it's very confidential. Things that are said in restorative justice circles or in those contexts are not, we ask people not to take them out of the circle in any way that it would identify anybody. Very neutral. Nobody's taking a side per se. You are just sharing your experiences. It's transparent. We have a process that we follow, and we let people know what that process is so they know what's going to be expected. And we always want to be aware and be very careful about making sure we're keeping the quality in the process, so that we're not allowing things to go outside of what the values and the guidelines have already been set up as being, and what we know we need to protect to make everybody safe. One of the parts I didn't say here is that the facilitator of the circle actually takes part in the circle too. So it's what a lot of people think, well, isn't this like therapy? Well, no, because the facilitator is actually taking part in the circle. And it is, it's not focusing on the past so much as it is, here we are now, and where do we want to go from here? Okay, so it's a very distinctly different process. As we said, tier 1 is very much into relationship building, and those are generally called community building circles. They have a starting point. We have what we call setting center, or having a centerpiece that kind of focuses, gives people something to focus on. We have agreements or guidelines in the beginning, which kind of spell out, what do you expect here? What do you need here? And often things like confidentiality or things like sharing from the heart will be added to those types of guidelines and all. We have a question that kind of gives you a check-in. Might be something like, so if you were a color, what's your color? What color are you today? And why? Where are you coming from? Where's this color coming from? We have the principles and the practices which go along with all of our guidelines and our safety. And we have what we call, we don't always use it, but we do sometimes use what we call a guardian. And that's somebody who kind of is still in the circle and still participating, but they're also kind of keeping track of time and being, all those little processes that can get lost, so that we can move along and make sure that everybody's getting a chance to respond if they want to. Nobody has to. And that we also are going to respect people's time. So if we say it's going to be an hour or an hour and 15 minutes, that we want to be able to end by that time. And then again, we have a little question at the checkout, and we'll also perhaps talk about, what is the next step in one of those questions that we have before, and then, go on our way. In tier 2, these are harm circles that might happen in school, and by that we mean minor harm, not major. Somebody disrespected somebody else. This happens a lot with teens, right? And Regina, if there's anything you want to jump in on, please do.
Absolutely. No, you're doing a great job.
Okay. Regina has a lot more experience with the youth program, so I'm always glad to have her here. We ask a lot of restorative questions that get people thinking about what happened. What were you thinking at the time? What have your thoughts been then? How has it impacted you? Okay. Who's been affected? And what do you think needs to happen next? That's always what we want to end with is, what do you think needs to happen next? right? Because we want to get them thinking about the future and where they can go from here. Okay. And those questions are pretty much the same, whether it's the person who has done the harm or the person who has had the harm done to them. All right. And I don't know if you, it's probably just my screen, but I know my view of the people is kind of right on some of this. So you might need to move your view of the people to see it all. And then restorative conferencing is basically the same as a harm circle, except it might be a little bit more structured. So you might have a little more structure to it. And the percentages are just, you know, this is maybe the percentage of what we would do in all these types of circles. So most of them are usually going to be community circles, relationship building circles, and then we get into, less are repairing relationships. And then even less are going to be rebuilding relationships. And this is when you have major harm. Now, I say that because that's where we are right now at this point. It doesn't mean that that's going to stay the same forever. We may be called on to do more rebuilding relationships in the future, especially with our polarization that is in our society at this point, and all the differences of opinion and all the new information that's coming out and new sharing of experiences that are really making people examine their own realities and their own perceptions of reality. So with these, we have harm circles where there's been major harm, the reentry mediation, and this is more like being incarcerated, not just being suspended from school, but being incarcerated, possibly being in a drug treatment, or some type of treatment facility, where there's been a lot of harm done because of one's addiction, and now you're coming back into the community clean, and you need the support of the community, and whether that community is your family or your friends or your neighborhood, whatever it is, in order to maintain, you need that community support. And then family group conferencing, and this is something we just really tried to learn more about. This is with kinship. If a child or children are about to be taken away from a family because of whatever the circumstance might be, to be able to sit down with the family and discuss, how can the family support these folks instead of having the children put into foster care or put into some type of institution. So this is something we're really excited to be part of now. And as I kind of mentioned before, with pre-work, it's very minimal. Everybody has to do consent forms, regardless of what type of restorative justice practice they're involved in. With tier 2, it gets a little more formal. We have full intakes. We'll have pre-conference meetings. We're going to have a real thought process so that we have the intention of the circle really prepared in our mind, and we know what questions we're going to use to help to bring that intention out. And with tier 3, there'll be multiple pre-conference meetings. Participants will be informed of their role, of the expectations of the circle. There very well might be a script, a seating chart. And by a script, I mean who's going to talk first. Whereas in regular community circles, it usually is the facilitator who starts, but it could be anybody really. One of the other facets of a circle that I didn't mention is we often use what's called a talking piece, which could be a stone. It could be something that people bring themselves, something that means something to them. And it's just so that they have something, so they know when they have the piece, it's their turn to talk if they want to. But people don't have to talk. They can pass. They're always offered another chance. We do another round. But we do hope that people will share, because that's when you're going to get the most out of it, is when you share your story as well as listening. But sometimes it takes a while. People are not always able to do that right away, and that's okay. So that's really kind of an overview of restorative justice. Questions?
Lou, and Regina, how does someone begin that whole process?
Sure. It kind of depends on who they are. If they're a school, they would call Empowered Pathways and they would be referred to Regina, and then she would talk with the school personnel usually. I think Regina does a lot with attendance officers.
We do an awful lot with attendance mediation, and we do an awful lot of conflict coaching.
Yeah.
And we didn't really talk too much about that, but that's a one-on-one process where there's a facilitator that works individually and independently with a person or youth. And basically what we do, we don't look at the past. We don't go back and, like Lou said, we don't do counseling. We don't do therapy. That's not what we're there to do. We can look at one situation that may have happened in the past, and we try to come up with some strategies and coping skills for that individual so that if something similar happens in the future, they have a different a way to cope with it and to deal with it. So basically, too, I just wanted to jump into and say, when it comes to restorative practices, they're not just for schools. Anybody can do this. This could be, like Lou said, it could be any type of community member. It can be a family that's had harm inflicted by one member of their family that they're coming together and they're absolutely trying to heal that and to build those relationships again, too.
So would the family member then come to you guys directly, or would they do it through some other community resource that would hook them up with you? Or, what's the pathway?
They typically come through us. They'll do a
Okay.
referral. We have referrals that are on our website. They could do that or they can call us. But the important thing is, after the referral, there is a lot of pre-work that goes into it. So there's specific questions that are going to be asked to each family member. Right now, we're kind of doing things virtually because of COVID. Ideally, it's best to be done in person because you really want to make sure that individuals have the ability to speak freely about everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we do get referrals in from agencies.
Yep.
We also have a lot of people call themselves. And so it really just depends on where the need is. And it is as easy as Regina said. Basically, you either call or you go online to the website and you can fill out the intake form. And then we'll get back to you, if we have an idea of what the issue is. I would say if it's for a community circle where you're going to have a lot of people involved, it's really not as important to have all the people named. It would just be important to have some information about what maybe the issue is, and so that we have a little bit to go with when we talk to, and who the contact person would be. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, for those people who maybe don't have online access or don't know, aren't even aware that you're out there, are there community agencies that will say you might be interested in this and then give them your information? I guess I don't fully understand how in such far-ranging communities everybody even would know that you're there for the support. So do you work with other agencies who will then suggest a referral?
We definitely do. We definitely work with several organizations, especially the schools, connected communities, different area schools, like I said. We do need to, we'd like to get that out a little bit more because right now, basically, we're getting most of the referrals from schools or self-referrals. So, it could be a teacher that knows that there's a situation within the family and she'll say, Empowered Pathways has these services that might be able to help. It doesn't necessarily just have to be, it could be a parent-teen mediation. It could be a regular mediation. It could be a custody visitation mediation. So they're aware of those services and they're passing them on.
Okay.
But definitely we need help in getting the word out, because you're right. We're one of the best kept secrets, I think. I used to say that about the trade agency, but now I think we are part it too. People don't know a lot about it. They see mediation and they see restorative justice maybe portrayed on television or by Hollywood, and it's often very different from what we're doing. And so they sometimes say, I don't want that. You got to have lawyers. No, you don't need all that. But the courts are familiar with us. We work, we try to be on community meetings like the Homeless Committee. I know I've been to the Interfaith Coalition. Haven't been able to make the meetings very much lately, but I have been there for quite a bit. And so we try to be involved in community meetings and community organizations where they come together so that people do know we're here. Yeah.
And where are you out of?
We're right in Utica.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Utica?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you know the Broderick Building on State and Court? The big old building there. Now they have the lofts at
Yes,
502.
yes, yes.
Yeah, we are in that.
Okay.
building. Yep. But we serve our CDRC, which is a Community Dispute Resolution Center, serves Oneida and Madison counties mainly. Occasionally we'll do something in Herkimer County if that CDRC does not already provide the services. But we try to, do Oneida and Madison counties.
Is there a number that somebody can reach out to you for?
Absolutely, it is. I'll actually put it in the chat. 315-724-1718. And the email, if you just are emailing in general, would be info@empoweredpathways.org or CNY.
CNY.org.
It's a long one, and you have to have the S on pathways. And then Regina and my emails are R. Brown and L. Blanchard.
I'm wondering about some examples maybe of where people need restorative justice.
Some examples of what?
Of where people would need to get into the process of restorative justice.
Sure. So with community building, it could be maybe a housing complex, okay, or a neighborhood. It could be just a group of individuals that want to get to know each other better and to explore, common interests or philosophies. With the minor harm, schools are a big place for that.
Probation departments.
Probation department, yes. So that we do get quite a few referrals for that. And actually before COVID, we had a circle at one of the schools, which was going very well. And it would be children who were just maybe falling behind a little bit, had some attendance issues, or were close to having, being, suspended or disciplined for some reason because of attendance issues. And it really was just a place for them to come and talk. And it's amazing what comes out once you have a little bit of trust built up. You find out that somebody's father died or somebody that they love died, and they're dealing with that, and they're dealing with trying to go to school, or maybe, they have to take care of their sister at night. And so it's hard for them to get their homework done. So all kinds of things come out that, and they find out other people are dealing with similar issues.
And it could even be something like if a teacher had passed away, the harm that was created by that.
Right. Yeah. So those are
It
the.
seems like a broad understanding of how injustices happen. And, like even within a family, there can be a sense that a child can feel that he or she's been, or they have been these days, have been treated unjustly somehow. And then you try to find a process to help both parties get back to justice. That's something to do.
Yeah, definitely. That would be part of it. And actually talking about justice, definitely in the past few years, last two particularly, the issues of the disparity in justice and the social issues and diversity, equity, inclusion issues have all really become in the forefront of our minds, as they should be. And so those are definitely places where circles can be used to explore. Because, as I said, it's not a discourse, it's not a dialogue. So you really are charged with listening. And we all have our own perceptions, even in our own families. I have a sibling who's 10 years older than me. Our perceptions of our home life are very different, because by the time I was old enough to have memories, she was already out of the house. So they're both real. Both of those perceptions are real. They're both realities. And to be able to sit with people who have totally different realities from you and to share those stories gives a person a chance to change some of their perceptions and to actually build new realities. So that's a really powerful use of circles.
I love the emphasis on listening, and because I think there's so much power there, and so many people have not worked on just that basic skill of listening. So it's great. Thank you.
Yeah. And think about it. How many times have you wanted to be listened to and you've had the yes, but, or you shouldn't, right? And
Right.
that's very diminishing to us when that happens. And so just to really have people pay attention and hear you is extremely powerful.
Do you have things in place to deal with the refugee population and the language barriers and all of that? That's got to be really tough. Because I know, particularly in the Utica schools, there has to be a lot going on.
Absolutely. In the schools, we typically are able to utilize their translators. So that's kind of easy, but we absolutely will get translators from the refugee center when we need to. That's been a bit of a challenge for us, but it's one of the areas where, yes, we will do that.
Yeah, and we are struggling. What we'd really like to do is have mediators who are bilingual and from other cultures. So we've really tried to get the word out when we have mediation trainings and, recruit them to come in, because we feel that is important. And we do recognize it's definitely a missing link with our services.
I want to make sure everyone understands, though, that we've entered into something of a relationship and agreement with Empowered Pathways. And this is a resource that's available to you for a variety of different purposes. John, you asked about some instances in the short time that we've been in relationship with them. We've used Empowered Pathways when we had two individuals that were in conflict with one another, and they helped them find their way back to relationship. We recently had a case where we had two individuals that were okay, but were in a situation where they needed to define better boundaries between the two of them. And Empowered Pathways was very helpful to the two of them. So conflict of pretty much any kind would be a place where you could talk to Empowered Pathways about ways to address it. But now, as I'm listening to it, I'm thinking it's something I really hadn't thought about, was that conflict that you see in your communities. If you want to wade into it and begin to practice restorative justice, then Empowered Pathways is a resource that's available to you to help you in that regard.
And we're neutral, so it can be hard to be in the midst of the fray and also try to mediate what's going on, whereas a party outside can help everyone to be heard and everyone's
Well, that's what I appreciate most about you. When when we've gotten into situations where we've tried to mediate, we kind of made a hash of things. So so bringing somebody in that is entirely neutral is just I think a brilliant stroke. So
Well, it truly makes a big difference. You have that person that's totally neutral. It's an absolute non-judgment zone. So, I mean, basically, we're just there to clarify. We're just there to make sure that everybody's voice is heard and let them know this is your opportunity. Go ahead and talk with each other. And it's amazing to see some of the transformations that do come out of it.
I've been working on nonviolent communication a lot lately, and I just see the parallels all over the place. And that's so wonderful because our society is violent. and anybody that's working to reduce the stress, the tension that's causing the bitter conflicts, bitter divisions. Wow, I appreciate it immensely.
Any other questions? Or thoughts?
Regina, thank you so much. This has been really
Thank you for
informative.
having us.
We're glad to be partnered with you, and look forward to working with you more.
Great.
Thank you very much. We look forward to it too.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
friends.
Bye, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye.